Alright. Let's get on the road. Alright, I hope you can hear me alright, folks. Might be a little scratchy. This Bluetooth mic isn't exactly premium. It's just the bare minimum off Amazon. But today, well, I guess tonight, it's a rather nice summer evening. I wanted to speak a little bit about something that's kind of been on my mind a bit since picking up studying at TAFE and learning about a few of the things that we've been learning about. Now, that thing is duty of care, and duty of care as it pertains to those who don't particularly understand it. And I'm going to pull over in a minute to let this truck pass me. I don't want to have to let him pass up on the mountain. But yeah, I wanted to speak about duty of care as it pertains to teachers and parents and people who are just in the general daily life care of our children today. Okay, we'll pull over in this bus stop for this, mate. Gave me a little toot, too. What a good man. Yeah, so something that's come to my attention is, at least in my life, duty of care was failed for me just immensely. Now, I suppose I should talk a little bit about what duty of care actually is and what that actually means. Duty of care in itself is, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's the responsibility that anybody who has care over someone else has to maintain that care. So that entails things like making sure that they're safe and making sure that all their rights are met. If you look up like a dictionary definition, that's what you'll get. You'll get just a whole spiel about that. And that's usually what people are talking about when they say duty of care. Now, that duty of care under law is extended to quite a lot more people than you would expect. Like right now, on the road, I have a duty of care. I have a duty of care to anyone who's, like, I might be able to put at risk with reckless driving, drink driving, anything that is illegal for a really good reason. The reason that those things are illegal, or at least the moral basis for that, is duty of care. And the same thing goes for, I don't know, hitting a child with a stick, for example. But I think that should extend, and I mean, in a certain context, it does extend to things like verbal abuse, or things like, what is it? It's, looking for the word, manipulation. That's it. There are a lot of stories of parents who are horrifically manipulative, and that does untold damage to a child. And I'm just having a bit of fun here. These twisties are great. And like, yeah, you combine physical abuse and manipulation and verbal abuse, and you end up with a pretty fucked up kid, right? And that kid's life is effectively ruined. Like, it's like putting in the wrong amounts of ingredients when you're cooking a cake, right? But in this case, you're putting in an ingredient that you're not supposed to have. You've taken a shit in the bowl, effectively. Now, some would argue you have a duty of care not to take a shit in the bowl. But there's also, to continue the shit in the bowl analogy, oh, that's a nice Mustang. To continue the shit in the bowl analogy, the people around you some of the people around you have a responsibility to see if you've taken a shit in the bowl, or go, hey, stop, don't take a shit in the bowl, or to clean up the shit, or at least report the shit to somebody once they've seen the shit being taken. Hang on, I gotta concentrate in this corner. It's a bit of a tricky one. Woo! Wow! God, that's good. But yeah, so that's effectively what duty of care is. It is the duty to not take a shit in the bowl, and also to be responsible and report when somebody does take a shit in the bowl. And that's where some people have something called mandatory reporting. Now, youth workers, which I'm studying youth work, so I kind of am at least vaguely qualified to speak on this, youth workers have, like, mandatory reporting. If we see signs of abuse, like the kid we're working with tells us there are signs of abuse and all that, or like that they're being abused, we legally have to report that. God, doesn't that sun look great? Well, I like riding at sunset. But yeah, if we hear about that legally, we've got to report that. That's our duty. Now, I think, I would believe, and I would like to believe, that teachers have a similar duty. But as far as I can tell, they don't. Now, I've not looked up any legal stuff for that or anything, but in my experience, all the teachers care about is making sure that kids don't get physically harmed. Because if kids get physically harmed under their watch at school, that's negligence, right? And I mean, that's provable as a breach of duty of care, effectively. But teachers don't have the same mandatory reporting, as far as I can tell, they don't have the same mandatory reporting kind of laws as a youth worker. And I think that they should. Obviously, they don't have the same confidentiality issues. Like, a teacher will talk about their students. That's just a given, yeah? They're going to talk to them about their students, their friends, and teachers and all that. But I think at least one of the things that, like, youth workers have that should extend to teachers is that part of duty of care. Because teachers, at the end of the day, do have quite a significant duty of care to students. Like, if you're a parent, you've signed paperwork for your kid to go on an excursion, and it says that you're putting your child in the care of the teacher. That you're literally signing a piece of paper that says that. Or if you're a student, you had to hand that piece of paper to your parents, and there's a good chance that you've read that piece of paper. I mean, I know I did. I always found that stuff really fascinating. But yeah, no, I think that teachers really have a responsibility to report things like that. They have a responsibility to report, I mean, not only physical signs of abuse at school and from home, but mental signs of abuse as well. Like, a lot of the reasons kids will act up, like at school or however, can be signs of abuse. Or you can see, God, doesn't that sound good? You can see signs of abuse in the way a child plays, and it's not particularly hard to spot. Teachers, however, don't report this. There aren't any laws or anything like that mean teachers have to report that, from what I can tell. And I think that should be a burden that is on teachers. Because if you think about it, a kid, there are at least your average kid, there's going to be two kind of social interactions for them with responsible adults who have duty of care. It's parents, and I mean, don't get me started on parents failing duty of care. They're usually the fucking worst with it. They're so bad at it. But teachers are the ones who have to go to school. Generally, you need a qualification to be a teacher, from what I know. And yeah, they're the other big thing that has duty of care over a child. I mean, obviously, for some children, you're gonna have different carers, right? You're gonna have different people who have that duty of care. I don't know, maybe a babysitter or something. I don't think the same responsibility should extend to a babysitter. Because, I mean, a babysitter is usually somebody who's untrained, because the parents want to hire them because they're cheap, and they don't have to pay them a full wage. So, obviously, having that extend to babysitters is a little bit silly, but I definitely think that teachers should have a responsibility to mandatory report just the same as any youth worker does. I feel like I'm repeating that a lot, but my basis for that is, yeah, like I was saying, the fact that teachers, they're the most students anyway, are the one kind of person with duty of care that isn't their parent. And if their parent's the one being abusive, then that's gonna, like, their parent isn't gonna report themselves being abusive. Why would they do that? Then they're just gonna get in trouble. That's a little bit dumb. And the kids don't know how to report this kind of thing. That's why youth workers exist. So we can be a kind of an interface for services and reporting and all kinds of good things like that. But no, kids, like, I mean, some of them will go to the police station and make a police report. But very, very, very few of them, especially if they've grown up with abuse. I should have break the speed limit. If they've grown up with abuse, they're not going to know that they can go to the police station for it. They're not going to know that they can go talk to the appropriate person. And for the most part, like, kids suffer from attachment as well, so they're not gonna go, like, it's Stockholm syndrome, right? They're not gonna go to a police officer who they think is gonna arrest their parents. Because even if you do abuse a kid, the sad fact is that kids develop that attachment and they stay attached. So without proper intervention, they still love the parent that abuses them, which is just, yeah, it makes the whole situation more difficult. So I think if teachers were able to initiate that when they see these, like, blatantly obvious signs of abuse. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, yeah, hang on, like, yeah, I guess that's the thing, right? It's the blatantly obvious signs of abuse, right? And I think that it's fucking, I don't know, just downright scummy that teachers don't report it when they see it. The other side of that, the other side of the coin with teachers that I think I wanted to talk about a little bit was when teachers are witnessing abuse, right? And this is most obvious in the context of, like, bullying at school, right? And that's probably the easiest one to explain. When a kid, I don't know, one kid's being relentlessly bullied by another kid, right? Just constant shit. They've reported it to the teacher several times, and the teacher does nothing, right? Because that does happen, especially when it's verbal abuse. Teachers often don't take, oh God. They came out of nowhere. Come on, get going. Teachers often don't report, like, they don't take the steps that they should be taking to report abuse properly. Unless it is physical abuse, because that's where they can get slapped with quite a nasty negligence charge. God, I'm stuck between two SUVs. There's a big fucking black SUV right behind me, and a big fucking black SUV right in front of me. It looks further away on the camera, but I'm like right up this guy's ass. Oh, it's not safe to overtake up here either. Fuck's sake. Yeah, you can probably, I don't know if you can see the light from the headlights of the guy behind me. Yeah, what was I saying? So yeah, teachers generally don't report verbal abuse because unless the kid decides to take it to court, which is very rare, teachers don't usually get in trouble for that. They don't usually get in trouble for what is effectively failing their duty of care. Like, if I give you an example, say a kid's being yelled at by another student, or not necessarily yelled at, but called names every day, right? Constantly. And that does have a really serious effect on a kid. It's pretty horrific to go through something like that. But teachers generally won't, for the most part, in my experience, they won't take enough action for that kind of thing. But the second the kid who's being bullied snaps back and fucking throws hands or anything, any kind of physical violence is involved. Oh god, what the fuck is happening over here? There's so many people. Yeah, but the second the kid who's being relentlessly bullied throws hands, snaps back, anything like that, the teachers are right on it, and for the most part, punish the kid who's snapped back and thrown hands, even if it just happens once. Like, I'm sure everyone who's been bullied at school has a story like that, of that happening to them. Because it happens so fucking... Oh, gravel. Oh, God. It happens so fucking often, and to so many people. And I think that's the other thing that teachers should be held more accountable for, is children undergoing verbal abuse. Because constant verbal abuse is going to have, at least in my opinion, possibly more of an effect on a kid than, like, hitting them a couple of times. I mean, obviously, like, if it's another kid. If it's an adult, you've got a whole other thing going on there. But when it's one kid smacking another kid, like, that compared to, I'm not talking about just a couple of insults, I'm talking about, like, constant, ongoing, verbal tirade, harassment, abuse, right? And I think that teachers need to be held more accountable for, like, what's actually going on there, and not failing that duty of care. And I guess this is all to say that I think teachers really need better training when it comes to duty of care, and to just at a base level have a better understanding of what duty of care is and what at the end of the day, what their job is. Because they are caring for children. And I'd say most people who care about their kids don't want their kids running off and being looked after by a teacher or a carer who isn't going to be able to fulfill their duty of care. I know if I had kids, I wouldn't. And I know as a youth worker, if I was looking after, or if I was responsible for a kid, I would do whatever I could to make sure that they wouldn't go into a situation where duty of care would be breached. I mean, legally that's kind of part of my responsibility at a certain extent. But it's also just like a moral thing. I don't know. Yeah, I guess my point is I think we need greater accountability for duty of care in the context of teachers. Doesn't that sound good? Woo! But yeah, I mean, if you've not really heard of duty of care before, it might be worth... God, that view's good. You can't see it on the camera and I can't turn it, but there's a fucking spectacular view of the sunset. God damn. Probably shouldn't be distracted on the road. I mean, if you know any teachers, any people who are in that position of duty of care, or if you're in the position of duty of care yourself, like if that is something that you know is one of your responsibilities, or that you can presume is one of your responsibilities, and if you think it might be, it almost definitely is. That's just kind of the rule of duty of care. You almost always, if you think you might have a duty of care, do have a duty of care. It's a lot more broad than what most people would expect. But if you or someone you know does, I would seriously consider just reading up on some, like, I don't know, just doing a Google search on duty of care and reading a couple of things. I know I forget specifically which agency it is, but there's a lot of stuff from VidGov about it. Because a lot of government agents have duty of care, and it's one of the things that kind of is a basis for our laws. So it's considered pretty important. But if you have that responsibility, or you know someone else who has that responsibility, even if you're a parent, just do some reading on what duty of care is and come to understand it properly. Another source that would probably be pretty useful in trying to understand duty of care a little bit, and really to understand that duty of care is about upholding a child's rights, right? If you have a duty of care to a child. Looking up, I think it's the UN's Convention on the rights of the child. And they're a little bit more expensive than you would think. Like, kids need to be looked after because, at a certain extent, they're not only the future, but it's the formative years for someone. And it's when somebody is developing opinions and working their shit out. So, it's when you can do a fuck ton of good, is helping them form that and form good opinions, good habits, just to become a better person. Because if they're able to become a better person, they're going to have better effect on other people, and they're generally going to have a better life. So it's a lot more critical than most people seem to think it is. Like, it's something that has a lasting impact when you are able to fulfill that duty, and is like, you leave a really significant mark on the world doing that. So I say it's a lot more important than people seem to think it is. And I think duty of care is one of those things that, oh god, these twisties are nice down the hill, but the nice breeze is very good. What was I saying? Duty of care is one of those things that's just, it's so common, and yet so few people actually understand it, and actually understand the extent of their responsibilities. And actually understand that most people have a duty of care of some description. I mean, obviously, usually that is to different extents, right? Duty of care it'll extend less in my current position where I am, where I'm riding a motorbike down the road. I have a duty of care to simply not be reckless around other people. And I have a duty of care to keep other people safe. If I had a pillion, I would have, like, somebody on the back of my motorbike. I would have more responsibility to take care of them. If you're driving a car and you have passengers, you have a pretty huge duty of care to them. God, look at that red through the trees. That's spectacular. That's awesome. God, the views up here are so good. I love riding through the mountains. But yeah, like, everybody at a certain point has duty of care. And most people don't know what that entails. So I think it's very important that, and I think the world would be a better place if we all understood what duty of care meant and the idea behind that concept. Anyway, I think I'm going to find a spot to pull over and wrap this up in a second. But thanks for listening to me ramble, I suppose. Good on you if you made it through the whole thing. I was repeating myself a lot at the end there. Trying to concentrate on writing and talking's a little bit of a challenge, but you know. But yeah, no. Look up duty of care and do what you can to understand it a little bit better. Where's a good spot to pull over? Oh, I think there's one in the town that's coming up. Yeah, there's a good spot just up here. Something I normally don't ask for with my videos, but this, I suppose it's a bit of a longer one, is that chuck us a sub, chuck us a subscribe. Because I don't think I fucking ever, might have been a couple of times, but in the large majority of my videos, I just let it be the content. But as of posting this video, I have, I think, 90 subscribers. I've been running this channel since, what, maybe 2013? And it would be fucking cool to finally reach 100. I'd love to reach 1,000 so I could stream on YouTube, but I suspect that won't happen for a little while. But yeah, no, if you enjoy some of the more interesting content I post, and if you think it has any kind of value to it, maybe chuck a subscribe and catch some of my content in the future. Anyway, I'm gonna hit the stop rolling button. What was that? 25 minutes. Alright, well, thanks for listening to me ramble for, what, half an hour? Cheers, folks.